but you have to step into someone you haven't really come yet. First of all, it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong. In some way, shape, or form, you start feeling like you must be failing at something. You must be missing out on something. And you might see everyone else's, highlight fees, and you'd be like, they're succeeding, they're buying another business, or they're getting promoted at work, or they're having new babies. And you might be feeling like, I'm missing out, like, what am I? Like, I don't even know if I'm an entrepreneur, if I'm a business owner, what am I? So those moments are also great opportunities to get to know yourself and to really understand, what do you want?
Hello, everybody. My guest today is Estefany Marte, international strategist and speaker. Estefany is an entrepreneur, strategist, speaker, and mom of 2 girls who helps CEOs and founders grow their businesses through times of transition without missing a beat and without missing bedtime. She's active on LinkedIn, where you can find her. And her current project is Humans in Transition, a project focused on conversations with founders and leaders around the world discussing moments of deep transition in their lives. So, Estefany, you work a lot on transitions with people. I did an interview with you where you asked me about some of my life's transitions. You even made me cry at some point. So I'd like to know, why is this work important to you? And what is it that you're hoping to achieve? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish?
Well, actually, it all started because I was going through a transition myself after done the exit of my business. And I was starting to feel very lost, and like, it was weird because after an exit, you're like happy and thrilled, but people don't usually talk about that feeling of being lost and not really knowing what goes next and what are you and who are you without your business. So I was feeling very lost and lonely. And I said, okay, let me reach out to, my EO friends. And I started having these informal conversations with them where they were like, yeah, I felt that. I felt this in this other occasion. Yeah, I understand. And they started giving me tips that were actually super helpful and that I was not finding anywhere else. So I said, okay, this is very interesting. And then I said, I did 1, I did 2. I've already done over 30. I'm fascinated by the project because it shows how transitions really level the field. And it puts us all in a position where we can connect with each other. We can learn from each other, because it's a moment where you lose a lot of the certainties and securities about life and about who you are and about how you see yourself. So automatically it gives an opportunity for people to reach out, to connect, to understand themselves better. And just those conversations shows the richness of the common wisdom of people. And when you tap into that, I just feel so connected. I feel so aligned with everybody I talk to. So I think it's very important to talk about the things that people don't usually address, so that if someone is living through them, they don't feel like they're doing something wrong or that they're missing out. And it's just part of the process.
It's really hard for me. What became extremely helpful during one of these transitions, it was after exiting a business and leaving my day-to-day role there, and then letting some time go by and feeling like something wasn't quite right. And then I realized I was grieving. And it was a really interesting lens to look at it through, because I was grieving my old self because I had to leave that self behind. I didn't want to be that anymore. I wanted to change, but I was still leaving it behind. It was still everything that I was used to. But specifically the word of the use, grieving, when I've shared that with other entrepreneurs, it's been very helpful for them to kind of place that feeling that you're talking about, that feeling of being lost. And there's the saying, I forget whose it is, but you're not yet who you want to become, but you're no longer who you were, right? And that time is difficult and should be honored. By the way, for our listeners, EO is Entrepreneurs Organization. It's an organization of almost 20,000 entrepreneurs around the world that both Estefany and I belong to. So what have you learned about transitions? I mean, what are some of the, without asking you to divulge anybody's inner stories or give away any, what have you learned? What are some of the most interesting things you've heard?
It's very interesting because the stories are so different, Stavros. Like, they go from divorce to exiting their business, stepping down from their business because of retirement. Some stories have been about liquidating their business because it just didn't work out. Some stories about stepping up as a family business successor. And the most interesting thing for me is being how, even though the stories are all different, in the end, the learnings and the insights and the connection potential that is there is the same, which is transitions are a great opportunity to get to know ourselves better. Because like you say, it's a moment where you have to let go of who you were, but you have to step into someone you haven't really become yet. Like, first of all, it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong. In some way, shape, or form, you start feeling like you must be failing at something. You must be missing out on something. And you might see everyone else's, highlight fees, and you'd be like, they're succeeding, they're buying another business, or they're getting promoted at work, or they're having new babies. And you might be feeling like, I'm missing out, like, what am I? Like, I don't even know if I'm an entrepreneur, if I'm a business owner, what am I? So those moments are also great opportunities to get to know yourself and to really understand, what do you want? It's a moment of a blank canvas where you can literally choose what you're going to paint. And if you do it with intention, you can paint a next phase that is filled of purpose and impact and, love and connection. But most people tend to usually either want to fast forward by it because they don't want the awkwardness. They don't want to feel the discomfort, which is very natural. And some people just float around like dead leaves. Like, I'll see where life's kind of like takes me to. But what I've seen with these people is that they found ways to put strategy into those transitions. So they've come up with hacks and things like, go back to yourself, go back to nurturing your body, nurturing your mind, nurturing your spirit. Those are moments where you can truly connect with spirituality, whatever that means for you, right? And whether that is religion or not, or some other way of spirituality, those are moments where you can really connect with that. Your upbringing, why you do the things you do, why you act the way you act. So those are moments where if you do them with intention, you can really understand yourself better. And from that baseline, you can say, okay, my next step in this blank canvas is this. And then you can start, getting that into motion.
I've always been hesitant to commit to things, but I don't mean that like as a blanket statement. I mean that when I commit to something, I really commit to it. And I think that's true of a lot of entrepreneurs, is when they set an intention, they really go at it and they try to create it. So in a way, sometimes I'm hesitant to commit because I know once I commit, I'm all in, right? I become credible. I become a person of my word. I drive forward to try to make it happen. Not that failure doesn't become an option, but I start behaving as if failure is not an option and just kind of making things happen. I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we have this love-hate relationship with intention because it is both our strongest power and also the source of our biggest pain. Because we know the minute we set our intention on something, we're going to suffer, in one way or form to make it happen. And so we hesitate. So a lot of people in transitions, for me, I'll speak for myself personally. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I want to be next. And I don't want to rush to set an intention on what I want to be next. But then I'm like, wait, but I'm just sitting around not being anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of like, so what do I do? Right. And that's where the discomfort comes from.
It's so interesting you mentioned that, because in a recent interview, the person that I was interviewing says something like, I've spent my whole life trying to get ahead of myself and trying to, since I'm a doer, I just think that I will do my way out of any situation and problem. So I will do. And I realized that this was a time for me to be. And I thought that was so interesting because exactly like you say, there's a part of us that really believes that we can act and fix and figure it out our way out of any discomfort and any problem. And sometimes it's a moment of just being and really getting to know what that means for you in this moment of your life. So, which might be totally different than what it meant for you last year. So for you, being you might mean, being a person of impact, being a person of purpose. And in a way, you have to give room and space to let that unfold and develop. And it's very uncomfortable and it's very painful because we do like certainty and we do like a plan where I can go and say, I'm going to hustle my way out of this, like A, B, C, D, and I'm going to wake up and grind and fix it. But some phases and some stages in life, you just have to be, and you have to focus in that. As hard as that is, the benefits in the long term will be so much greater because you will be able to make a decision out of purpose and not a decision out of fear of being in that uncomfortable space.
Each one of these episodes is really built around dispelling a lie. So the purpose, my purpose, the company's purpose, the podcast purpose is helping entrepreneurs attain, sustain, and celebrate freedom, right? How do you get more fulfillment, more freedom in your life? Too often we go off to do entrepreneurship because we want freedom and fulfillment, and we end up feeling like we built a prison, we built something that we're not happy being part of. The point here is to help people through those journeys. And specifically for each episode on the podcast, my request of the guest is, what is a truth that you know, or what is a lie that other people believe, whichever way we want to look at this, that really holds them back from finding that freedom or that fulfillment? And maybe even something that you believed 5-10 years ago, but you've changed. So I really liked your answer to this one. Do you want to share it with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. My belief, and it has yielded a lot from these conversations of the project I'm working on, is that we can have a very fixated concept of who we are and what our identity is. And I believe our identity evolves in time. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be a doctor today and a lawyer next week. That means that you're so much more than those labels, and that you have to give room and space for yourself to expand what that self-identity is. And that might mean that you have to test drive different things. So for example, for most of my life, I identified myself as being, the straight A student, the kind of nerdy. And at some point I said, I want to live. Like, I want to try out new things. I want to be adventurous. I want to just wake up one day and say, I'm going to travel to X destination and just buy the tickets and go. And I gave myself the opportunity to test drive that. Now, that doesn't mean that I will keep that if I don't enjoy it. But that does mean that I will give myself the kindness and the grace to be open to the fact that we can expand who we are without being fakes and without betraying our authentic self. Because I think that word has been thrown around so much that in a way we have come to believe that if we're testing these other versions of us, then we're not being authentic. And these days, being unauthentic, is almost like sin. But reality is that we are human beings. We're living human beings, which means that we're constantly evolving. We're constantly stretching and expanding. And, the world around us also influences that sense of self. So if we give ourselves the chance to test drive those new versions, then maybe you find out that you're a little funny, or you find out that you're more adventurous than you thought. And the potential behind that is that in order for you to reach out anything big, you need to become the person that attains that. Like, when you're out of alignment, everything takes so much effort. And the important thing here is for you to have that moment to pause and assess, who is this person today? Because maybe for you, for example, in years before, that would have been a breeze for you.
And it would have energized me. It would have given me energy. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have energized you. You would have been, pumped up, amazing by that group of people, by that group of tasks, by those projects. But something in you evolved, something in you changed. And if you don't have the awareness that that is happening, then you're doing the things you don't want to do. You're doing the things that are stealing your energy, and you don't really know why, because intellectually, you're thinking, this is my business. I love this. I started this out of passion. How can it be? Why is this happening? When in reality is that if you think about it, your business is an extension of yourself. So if you evolve in time, which we all do, and then that business doesn't respond to who you are today, then you're all constantly going to be knocking your head against the wall. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to be aware of it and see if you can create a space in that business that responds to who you are today, that makes you feel energized. And that can be focusing on a specific project. It can be focusing on a specific target market, or focusing on a specific set of processes and going for that and figuring out how you can delegate the rest. Or it might even mean stepping out of the business entirely, so that you can go and do things that really energize you and give you freedom, which is what we're all looking for.
even though I needed to be that person at my last business, and I was able to cut back the amount of hours, right? First, I needed to be that person 40 hours a week. Then I needed to be that person 20 hours a week. And it got to the point where I needed to be that person maybe 10 or 15 hours a week, but I still didn't want to be, you know what I mean? Like I still burnt out, and I kept arguing with myself. I'm like, you're only here like 3 hours a day. What's wrong with you? And it was so much of my mind was out of alignment with who I needed to be when I showed up that it just felt completely burnt out. And I think that was a mind trip. Like, you're just like, why? It's so little effort. Why is this not enough?
And then you start thinking like, maybe I've become lazy over the years. Maybe I've lost.
I don't have the hunger I used to have. I'm not, yeah.
Well, I don't have the drive. Like, I don't have the hunger for attaining things. And if in reality, if you start looking what you want and what it is that will make you feel energized, you're going to see that you can work even more hours than ever before, because you're going to feel an alignment, and then you're just going to flow through things. Like all entrepreneurs, we don't fear work. We don't fear the hustle. The problem we have, in my experience with, first of all, myself, and then the other entrepreneurs that I've had conversations with, is that in a way we really believe that we can hustle through everything, and then we're very hard on ourselves when that hustle doesn't yield the results that we have in our head. And that's very frustrating. And it starts with you realizing, is this really what I want in this stage of my life?
I want to go two ways. I want to ask you about your past, and I also want to ask you a question. So let's go with the question. So, and then we'll go on your story shortly. Is self-identity something that is found or built? And let me just make the question maybe a little bit more emotionally charged. Like, a lot of people say, I want to find myself. You know what I mean? And I know many, many times in my life, I'm like, I don't like where I am right now. So you go on this mindset of searching, as opposed to going onto a mindset of building, which is maybe what your marathon runner does after they've decided that they want to run the marathon. So in your experience, are they both true? Do they feel different?
I think in a way they're both true. I mean, you are born with a personality, with a spirit, with soul. My 4-year-old, you can clearly see she has a personality. She has a set of things she really enjoys, and she had a set of things that she really doesn't enjoy, and she just doesn't do it. Some way along the road, we forget how simple it is. Like, you do more things that you want, you do less things you don't want. Right? But she has it very clearly. But I do believe that you need to empower yourself and build from the baseline of figuring out what you like and energizes you, and what you don't like and doesn't energize you. And for you to do that, you have to give yourself the grace and the kindness of trying things without all these different labels that we put on ourselves. So if that means that you're usually that you're very reliable and serious and respect, because you have come to believe that you need to be that in order to be respected. And then if you don't give yourself the grace to crack a joke in a meeting with friends, or to dance a song that you really feel like dancing, then you're always going to be that, person, and you're always going to be in conflict once you evolve and you want to be so much more than that. I think the first step is to realizing and having the self-awareness of what energizes you, who you are, your story, your background. And then from there, you start taking the steps to build this new person. Because before you become the famous podcaster or the world-renowned author, in a way, you have to become that yourself. Because if not, you're going to sabotage yourself automatically. You're going to start doing things subconsciously that go against that dream, because a part of you wants to think that you're not that person, that you don't belong.
Very much. I mean, I think the name of this podcast is Wednesdays Off, and it comes from my ritual of sorting out Wednesday and saying Wednesday is my day. And sometimes it's for rest, and sometimes it's for time with my wife, and sometimes it's for exercise. But it's the day where I'm proactive about the life that I want to create, as opposed to the life that I currently have right now. And it's done in this way where there's nothing to fix, right? You need to love yourself and your circumstances while you're in them, while you work to improve and change them. But you're not fixing, you're growing. And I think that mindset is fundamentally different. It really resonates with me, this time of being proactive, like you're saying, and exploring your identity and who you might be. And maybe just to encourage anybody who's listening, it doesn't have to be a whole Wednesday. It doesn't have to be your whole personality at once. I tend to ask myself, what is the smallest meaningful step? Literally, like, what is one thing I can do that will make a dent? And then just do it and see what happens. For example, this month, like I like to exercise. I like to be physically fit. And I suck at pull-ups. So I just decided that just for 1 month, I would commit to doing 30 pull-ups a day. It doesn't matter if I do them one at a time. It doesn't matter if I do them 3 at a time. But for 1 month, I'm going to do that. And the only thing I know for sure is at the end of the month, I will be better at doing pull-ups than I was. But it's such a small step. It literally takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes scattered throughout my day. But it's helping me kind of form an identity, and become who I want to be. It doesn't have to be big, I guess, is if you know you're not who you want to be and you're listening, just find a small, meaningful step and take it. And that's all there really is to it.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be the 30 pull-ups, because to me that sounded so impossible. I was like, oh my God, 30 pull-ups in a day. I mean, for me, the way I uncovered it from these conversations has been just take the next right move. And depending on the moment you are in your life, that can be as basic as getting out of bed. That can be in a moment where you're in this deep, dark place of depression, of anguish, or just sadness, where the best right move you can do is just get out of bed. Then you get out of bed and then you say, okay, I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to get out of this PJs and I'm going to take a shower, or I'm going to put on makeup. And then that's as far as you can go. And that is okay. So I think it's very important, like you say, that we take these micro moves that they tell our brain and energize you in saying, you're okay, you're making progress. I mean, at the end of the day, micro progress is still progress. And you have to create this energy around you of, I can do it. I got you. I'm rooting for you, Stephanie. Like, okay, get out of bed, take a shower, put on makeup, fix your hair. And that's it. That's all you can give that day. And that's okay.
And I think the other thing about small steps is, if you make a big step, you have the opportunity to make a big mistake. And there are times in life where you need to take big risks. But if you don't really know where you're standing or where you're going, a small step can only lead to a small mistake. You know what I mean? And so you always have the opportunity to go backwards and shift and try something else, as opposed to kind of saying, oh no, I'm going to do this and it's going to be all this. And then you kind of go all in. And then you realize halfway through the process or earlier that it's not actually what you want. It's not who you want to be. It's not your identity. It doesn't fit. And now you've created the whole thing, right? The person who wants to be a marathon runner doesn't start by saying, I'm going to go out and run 26 miles tomorrow, right? They start by saying, I'm going to go run a mile and see how that feels. And somewhere along the line, they convince themselves that they can be the marathon runner because they want to keep running. They enjoy it. They're good at it. You know what I mean? And so they keep doing it. Let's backtrack. Tell me about your life story. Tell me about kind of where you grew up, what some of the highlights were.
So I grew up in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, born and raised here. I've lived here my whole life. So I was born into a family of entrepreneurs. Both my mom and my dad had a business. They quit their jobs and started a business in our house. And eventually that business started growing and growing. It was a fruit processing business. And they would buy the fruit from the farmers. They would convert them into fully eatable products like fruit puree or frozen fruit, juices, marmalades, etc. So I grew up in that business. And when I said I grew up in it, it's literally I grew up in it because the business was in my house. It meant seeing my dad negotiate with vendors or seeing my mom dealing with a conflict between employees. That's what I grew up seeing. So eventually, when I was around 18 years old, my dad got sick and I had to step over and take over the family business as the general manager when I was about 20 years old. In that moment, the business was, relatively small. It was like $250,000 a year in sales. But even that, which is a lot bigger than most businesses, that was the business that would feed my family. So in a way, I went into this mindset of, if I do my job wrong, then my family won't be able to live the life that they worked so hard to live in their late years. So I was a great driver. The business grew significantly throughout 8, 9 years. Eventually, I did a successful exit on that business, and I was asked to stay as the CEO and owner, because I also kept some shares of the business that acquired us and the business that I had sold. So suddenly I was in charge of two businesses and I had to merge them and I had to design the expansion plan for those businesses. And that's what I did for many years. And then eventually I jumped fully into corporate and did a project we had the task of doing 2 acquisitions and 2 mergers within 2 years. So in my career, it was filled with transitions and change and expansion and leading other people through moments of big change.
Almost a sign of success, right? The transitions are almost a sign of success because you were required to grow into these new positions as everything happened.
Yes. I mean, in a way, yes. And in other ways, I think the thing that I missed out along the way is that everything started from a project that I jumped in because I felt the duty and the responsibility to take over for my dad. I designed a life and a set of skills around that at a very, very young age. So when I exited that business, fast forward, 9, 10 years after that, then suddenly I found myself at 30 something years old, very early, 32, 33 years old, for the first time unemployed or without a clue of what I was going to do with my life. And that was a moment of a lot of uncertainty, like we discussed in the beginning, a lot of, I don't know who I am without my business. Even though it was a very successful journey and it was a very successful exit, I still felt like I was doing something wrong. So that was a moment, I would say, of 6, 7 months where I had to really figure it out me and figure it out. Okay, who am I without the business? What do I want without that business? And it was the first time I had a fully blank canvas in front of me. And it can be very scary when you have that blank canvas, right? Like it's a great opportunity, but at the same time, it can feel very scary. And I think one thing that I did do right is that I gave myself the freedom to test different things. And they were as crazy as maybe I should go to medical school and maybe I should become a surgeon. And my husband was like, we have 2 kids and I was we go there. But I also allow myself to say, okay, maybe I want to write a book. Maybe I want to become a creator. Maybe I want to become a speaker. And then is when I started that journey of what if I become a speaker? And then I started testing that and it felt amazing. And then suddenly I was like, oh, I really want to do this more. And I started educating myself a lot more in that and studying more about the content creation industry and everything that has to do with podcasts and newsletters and personal brands and books and obviously speaking and education. I was like, this is fascinating. Like it's an opportunity for you to shape future generations, for you to change people's mindsets around things and hopefully move the needle a little bit so that people feel better about themselves and we can have a little bit of a better world. So that's kind of like the journey I took after my exit. And it's been quite a ride. But at the same time, it has demanded that I have a beginner's mindset and allow myself to look foolish, doing a lot of things and learning very publicly. At the same time, a lot of things. And that means, for example, how do you edit a video? How do you create a reel? How do you write a newsletter article? How do you write a post on LinkedIn? How do you write something on Instagram? How do you write a book? And in a lot of ways, you're not born knowing those things. And the fact that you're a successful CEO or a successful entrepreneur doesn't mean that you're going to know these things. Probably means the opposite. So having the kindness with yourself and the grace to allow you to not know those things and to look very ridiculous learning them can really put you on a pathway of amazing potential. And I kind of that's a bit of the message of allow yourself to just look foolish and try out new versions of you and new versions of your labels and who you are. And you're going to see that it might bring you to this amazing journey that you were not even expecting. And I think that's a bit of the magic of everything, right? Where you can like allow yourself to be this new thing and just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, by definition, if you're not happy with the way things are, then those things need to be different. And they're not going to be different unless you start behaving differently, right? So a lot of times we hold ourselves back because we have this identity of who we are, how we make our decisions, what's working, what isn't working. And so we just kind of keep that operating system going. And so particularly around looking foolish, I bet a lot of people stop themselves from trying something new. Whether you're a child or a seasoned entrepreneur or anywhere in the middle, a lot of times you're like, I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the mind space, I don't have the time to go and try to be this different thing, to try this on, because I think a lot of times when we do something new, there's a cognitive load that comes with doing something new. And as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we're always doing something new so that we have this constant cognitive load. It's a lot easier, for example, to diet if somebody's told you these are all the meals you're going to eat and they're going to be prepared for you, as opposed to, hey, yeah, you need to kind of have a calorie deficit and you need to kind of do the following things. So go and figure it out and do it, right? And so I think that cognitive load often gets in the way of people trying on a new identity, a new thing, creating the space for it, creating both the physical space and the mind space in order to try on those identities. So what might be some words of encouragement to people, whether they're just worried about looking foolish or whether they're just worried that they're like, look, Estefany, I don't have the bandwidth to figure out how to be somebody new. I'm like suffering right now. You know what I mean? So how might you help them give themselves permission to do things a little different?
I think there's three things. Number one is, like we said before, going back to self. And that means check the basic things. Are you eating things that nourish your body and make you feel good and energized? You're not going to feel the same if you've had a bacon cheeseburger with a super big soda or a super large beer and a dulce de leche cheesecake than if you're having chicken breast and vegetables and something like that, right? So go back to the things that make you feel nourished in your body and make you feel energized. Move. And that can mean anything from taking a walk, running, doing 30 pull-ups, dancing, yoga, whatever that means for you that you enjoy, but move your body. Nourish your mind, nourish your soul. Go back to spirituality. If you follow any religion, go back to that. If you meditate, try out meditating. Anything that will make you feel at peace and that you can calm the chatter in your head. That can also mean finding the help of a coach, finding the help of a therapist, or someone you trust that can serve as a sounding board for what's going on in your head and can like.
Would it be fair to summarize those as kind of return to a base so that you can kind of look with new perspective from that base? And then I heard you just start talking about reflection, whether it's through a coach or whatever, to start focusing on kind of learning from yourself and actually paying more attention as opposed to being on autopilot.
Absolutely. It's going back to self, going back to home, going back to who you are. And there's always a positive ROI on investing in yourself. You're never going to have a negative ROI for reading a really good book or eating healthy food or training and exercising in a safe way. Like it never goes, oh, that was a bad investment of, my time and my resources. The second thing is share your journey, like share how you're feeling. And that's where I was going with before. Share that, like anxiety thrives in moments where you just stay quiet in your own head because you're just going rambling with yourself. But if you connect with people, you reach out to people and you share that emotional roller coaster you live in, you may find that other people are living the same thing. And then suddenly you have a connection with that person that might help you along the way. That can be a friend, that can be a community of other people going through the same thing. That can be a new hobby. And you find your community around that. But share the journey. Like, don't isolate yourself. Don't go, trying to avoid any social gathering, any social like that, because anxiety thrives in that. And finally,
before you go to the third, I might summarize that for my journey. Yes, you can share and connect so you don't feel alone, but also sharing for feedback. Sometimes just getting that feedback has helped me kind of go, oh, that's not what I was trying to do, but that's how that came across. Or, you know what I mean? So the minute you start to connect with people about what it is that you're developing a passion for, yes, you're giving yourself permission. It's kind of the first steps of giving yourself permission, but you're also giving yourself the gift of not working in a vacuum. You're not going to go into your bedroom, close the door, change who you are, and then open the door and leave your house. And now like you're that new person. Like you have to do it in public. You have to do it with the people around you.
Yeah, like we're not Superman going into that telephone booth. We're like, not, not us. A note to that is we have to be careful who we share that journey with, because usually those moments are moments of vulnerability, right? You feel vulnerable. So that doesn't mean that you have to go and share it with anyone out on the street. If you share it with someone that has earned your trust, and that means either someone that is trained for that, a coach, a therapist, a priest, whatever, or a friend that you really know that will cherish that vulnerability and protect it by not, saying negative things or being a naysayer to you, because you're vulnerable in that moment. So you need to protect your energy. So it's very important to be careful who you share that with. And the final thing is to experiment, to give yourself room and grace and the space to try out new things in a very small step, which is the next right move. So if the next right move for you means getting out of bed and trying a new lipstick color or a new dress, then go for it. And if that means for you that today at work, you're going to raise your hand and you're going to, say that idea that's been going in your head, but you haven't had you haven't just put it out there, maybe that's it for you. Or maybe that means that you're going to send an email to a person that might get you closer in that business idea that you have. So just take one micro move towards that, and eventually the road will unfold. So in Spanish we say se hace camino al andar, which means you make the road as you go. Unfortunately, we are not born with a manual. We're not born with a playbook. We kind of have to make it as we go, and that is very different for every person. So just give yourself grace and kindness to look like a fool, to make mistakes, to look like a beginner, and see that at the same time, you have so many opportunities to grow in those spaces if you give yourself the chance and if you do things with intention.
I think too, people are attracted to novelty. So going back to the lipstick example, if you wore the same shade of lipstick every single day for the last 10 years and showed up to the office, and then one day you wore a different shade that was noticeably different, people will notice. You know what I mean? People will notice the change. They'll notice the novelty. We're wired to do that. And that might spark a conversation, an idea, a conversation like, oh, I really like that color. You know what I mean? It looks good on you. And so making small acts of novelty, bringing small acts of novelty into your life are tremendous ways to have long-term change and impact, because you don't need to, again, I keep going back to, you don't need this whole massive shift. You just need a small, meaningful step. Like you're saying, just get out of bed. If that's what's hard for you, then that's the step. You know what I mean? And just do the small, meaningful step, and those changes compound and your life starts to change. So I always feel like what's missing from my life is play. What's missing from my life is adventure and play. And, for many years, I lived a very business focused, responsibility focused living. And especially the last 5 years or so, where the world started to become very, very sensitive, even jokes, right? You start holding back like, oh, I don't know if I should say that this way. Somebody may get offended, or I don't know if I should say that. So I personally went further and further into like serious Stavros mode. And for me, play is everything from philosophy, right? And talking ideas, to going on adventures and going on hikes and going on, to try new things, to just kind of cracking jokes with friends and just being around and not trying to achieve anything other than getting people to laugh. And at the same time, I struggle finding that old Stavros again, who used to be much more playful. It's just one step at a time. It's just one little thing that I try to add. It's making sure that I have the next adventure on my calendar, where I'm going to go next, so that I know that I'm doing that. Taking that opportunity to crack the joke and kind of go, all right, I might look like a fool, but you know what I mean? It's who I want to be. I want to be more playful. So,
and I think we're so good as entrepreneurs at planning business and projects and ideas. And we're very good at going like, okay, I have a Gantt chart for this, and I have a budget for this, and I have a business plan for this, and I have a board of directors for this other stuff. But very rarely do we have the same discipline and the same energy and intention to building the other, the side of life that, like you say, that is around playfulness and leaving and experimenting new things. And so, for example, this year I created a calendar and a plan just for those things. So it was like, I want to have an adventure with my children that can be done in one day. So that's probably not going to be flying and, flying to LA or something like that. But that can probably be go to a close by beach, or it can be going to the park and playing hide and seek in the park instead of the living room, whatever that is. And even though I didn't fulfill the whole plan, because life happens the same way it happens in your business, I was able to increase significantly the moments that I had with them that would mean playfulness, and that would mean joy, and that would mean doing new things. And like, it would be even to a point where my oldest daughter is 8 years old now, and my youngest is 4 years old. And their side of the family from their dad is Swedish. And my daughters had never gone to Sweden. They had never seen that side of their lives and that side of their family until this year, because we were very intentional at saying, okay, we need to put a vacation to Sweden, like a moment where we can be there for 2 weeks at least. And there's no emails, and there's no meetings, and there's no like, oh, I have a quick meeting, before we go out. And then that meeting extends and you end up working half of the day, and the kids sitting just watching Netflix and waiting for you to finish working, like it was full playtime. Like, some of the things were planned, and other things were like, okay, the weather is cute today. Let's go to the zoo. Let's go to the beach. Let's go to the park. And I think we need to put all that entrepreneurial mindset and energy into building the fun stuff as well, and being disciplined with that as well. Not waiting for us to be all tired, burned out, and hating life for us to go like, oh, let me take a vacation because, I really need it.
Yeah, I'm concerned right now. So there's a listener out there who's probably just getting started in their entrepreneurship, and they're like, okay, I'm taking away that I need to protect myself and my space and kind of all of that. And I think that's particularly popular with the younger generation. I think there's a listener out there who, like you, has maybe exited a business, and they have the space and time to kind of prioritize these things. And so they're getting a little bit of permission to grieve who they were and go through this transition of becoming this new self. I know there's also a listener out there who's in the thick of it, who's maybe just doesn't have a moment to spare. And they're going, well, that's great for you guys, but I can't go on a 2-week vacation without avoiding all my emails and doing all that stuff. So what's the message that we might share with them about, I guess, if I had to share a message, I would say that freedom is not earned, it's claimed, right? You don't wait till the end. You don't just like, I'm going to do all this stuff and then I'm going to be free. Like you actually just have to claim a small bit, whether it's just 15 minutes in the morning to meditate, or lunchtime, or a couple of hours at night with your family, whatever it is. Just start by claiming it, and then using that time to transform, to go through the transition you want to go through. If the rest of your life is not what you want it to be, if you're hustling and you're grinding and you're loving it, great. Keep doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think it's obviously goes in degrees, right? It can be as simple as, like you said, you know what? I am not going to eat lunch in front of my computer today. I am going to sit down and have a proper meal, and then I might take a 10-minute walk. I mean, that might be 45 minutes, 1 hour of your day, maybe, if at all. Or it might mean, you know what, I'm going to go pick up my kids in school and we're going to go for ice cream. And then I'm going to go back to my office. Then I'm going to go back to work. It can mean whatever you want it to mean. Just know that the first step is having the intention to claim that freedom, like you just said. Like, the first step is not normalizing 24/7 hustling and then waking up 60 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, 90 years old and going like, oh, no one goes like, oh, I wish I had worked more. Like, no one does that at the end. Like, everyone is, I missed out my kids' recital, or I missed out Thanksgiving dinner with my parents before they were gone. So I think we also need to be intentional about that and be mindful, like you said, that if we just let it be, our calendars are going to fill up no matter what. So I just claim, like claim half an hour, claim 15 minutes to at least not eat lunch in front of your computer and just do a proper meal with no phones, that you can just put it aside and actually see the other person in the eye and go like, hey, how was your day today? How is your family or whatever that is? And just that alone, or just taking a 10-minute walk, going to a park, getting barefoot on the grass.
If we look at it, the data from the other side, every single entrepreneur and beyond, they don't have to be entrepreneurs, but every single entrepreneur I know who truly feels like they live a fulfilled life has taken the approach of prioritizing and protecting space to do the things that they feel are important. I don't know a single entrepreneur who hustled, worked, exited their business, and then was happy. You know what I mean? Like the journey to freedom, starts early and it's never too late. I'm not trying to tell anybody it's too late, but you could be in the middle of grinding. And the very first step is find some time to protect so that you can start being proactive. Because you're just going to be reactive the rest of the time, and your whole career and your whole life is just going to go by with you just responding to everything that needs your attention, which is an endless list, right? So unless you start to protect your attention and put it where you wanted to put it, that's the story of every successful entrepreneur I know. That's what they did in order to get there. So
absolutely. And I'll give you a very concrete example. Back when I was doing the exit, I have no idea about the emails I sent them. Back then, I thought, I have to send this email. I must do this email. It's life or death. Oh my God. The world will stop if I don't send it. Today, I have no idea. The people, the senders, nothing. I don't remember nothing about that email. What I do remember is missing out on the Parents' Day at my kids' school. I remember that very clearly, because I had to ask some friends to step up for me and be my daughter's mom for that day. And I still regret that. So for the upcoming generations that might be entrepreneurs, they might be, grinding and hustling and building. They may be doing an exit. They may be building new businesses on the side. At least make it to bedtime when you have kids. At least make it to that little space in the day where your kid can feel that you're truly there for them, because those are the things that you will remember 5 days from now, 5 months, 5 years, 50 years. You will remember that you were or that you were not in those moments. You will probably forget the emails, the meetings, the projects, you're going to forget all that, but you're never going to forget if you were present or not for the life that you are building for yourself. Right? Because at the end of the day, that's why we're all building stuff, so that we can give ourselves and our families a better lifestyle.
Yes, one identity as entrepreneur, another identity for me has been dad. And if my identity as dad starts to suffer because my identity as entrepreneur is taking over, that's a pretty important decision to make. And not only just identity as dad, but what kind of dad? Do I want to be the dad that comes home and helps with homework? Or do I want to be the dad that yells at why isn't your homework done and I don't want to be. So thinking about what kind of dad I want to be and then making small, meaningful steps towards that. I hope my kids like me as a dad. I was going to say I try hard, but it's not hard. It's actually really easy and joyful to do, but I do it with intention. And again, everything in my life that's good is because I set an intention to become good at it and I made small, meaningful progress. So I think that's the message that I really would love people to hear, is just like, what identity do you want to try on and what small step can you take to get there? On that note, tell us about clown school.
Yeah, but it is actually very connected. Since I had an upbringing around adults. So I have 7 other siblings and they are all way older than me. So the one that's next to me, she's 15 years older than me. So when I was 4, she was already 19. And when I still believed in Santa Claus, she was looking for her first job. So that means that I had to learn how to be an adult very early on. And then if you fast forward to when I was 18, 20 years old, I take over the family business. And then I really have to be a serious adult. I had to be, to me, the most important thing back then was getting the business through, growing it, giving my family the years in their elder life that they deserved. But it was also being respected, feeling respected, because I was the youngest. Like I was leading people twice my age. I didn't want to feel that people were not taking me seriously. So for me, that meant be the most serious person you can be. And it worked. It worked. The business grew. We were very, very successful. I was a very successful CEO. But then I had my first child and I have no idea how to play with her. Like I have no idea how to connect with her. I felt very uncomfortable around her because first of all, I had been an adult in times where other people were being kids. And second of all, I really didn't have a normal childhood myself. So when my first kid came, who was Sophia, I really had no idea. Like I would get very awkward around her, almost like a very bad first date. And so I started avoiding her. And I would start feeling that with, guess what? Work. So I would get home very late, when she was already almost sleeping, or I could just read a book, which is very simple. I read a book, I give our kids good night. Okay, I can do that. But time kept on passing. And then when, for example, my husband would go away on a business travel, oh my God, I'm alone with her. Like, what am I going to do all that time? How am I going to fill that time? And eventually, I had very, very bad moments with her where I really felt I was disappointing her. Like I would miss out on appointments with her to play. Or like I said before, I would miss out on appointments of important days in school.
You must have been wanting to connect so bad and felt so unable to connect at the same time. Like it must have been so hard.
Not only that, and I think a lot of people go through this, which is you are successful in one part of your life and then you're totally incompetent in another. And it's like your mind cannot really understand. So you really struggle with that of, like we were saying before, of having that beginner's mindset and saying, okay, I'm going to have to learn how to play. So I had a couple occasions where I remember clearly feeling like a total failure as a mom. One of them was here in schools, they have Parents' Day, which I'm sure they also have in the States, which is your parents go to your classroom and they say what they do for work and, stuff like that, and share with other parents and with other kids. One time I totally forgot about it. I forgot completely. I had it in my calendar. I had alarms, but I went into a meeting and I went into the flow and I just totally forgot about it. And I only remembered about it when the meeting ended and I opened my WhatsApp and I find all these messages from my other mom friends going like, where are you? We're here. It's almost ending. We're going to go hug Sophia. She's really sad because she's the only kid there without parents. So my other mom friends have to step in and hug her and, do the things for her as if they were her mom. So I felt horrible about that and said, you know what? We need to change this. We need to put some intention into it. And, we're entrepreneurs. So I said, we need to put strategy into this. So I joined clown school, which was very interesting because the reason why I did it is because I saw this commercial in Instagram where they say, we teach you how to connect with kids. And I thought, oh my God, this is it. It's like family crisis was detected by the algorithm. So I went and everything clicked because they did teach us how to connect with them by becoming a kid ourselves. So for the first time in my 30 plus years old, I gave myself the chance to be a kid. I had to play like a kid. I had to connect with a kid, just reach out to any other kid and go like, hey, I'm Stephanie. Do you want to play with me? And at the risk of them saying no. But with kids, that's never the case. They always want to play. So that kind of became the gateway for me to start, first of all, feeling comfortable around my daughter. Second of all, playing with her and ultimately connecting with her. So going back to our previous point, take the next right move. For me, it was joining clown school because of that ad, because they promised that they would teach me how to connect with a child. And they did. It totally transformed my relationship with my daughter. But for you, it can be joining a class on meditation, or it can be joining a class with your spouse so that you guys can connect better. So just take that next right move and invest in yourself, and little by little things will start to change.
Estefany, tell us about your transition now. You're becoming a speaker. You are a speaker. Tell us about this journey, what it is you talk about, where you like to talk, who should reach out to you if they're interested in having you talk. Tell us about your journey as a speaker.
Yes. So my journey as a speaker started with this idea of trying out new versions of myself. The thing that I love speaking about is life transitions and business transitions as well. So I speak about how do you lead yourself through a moment of big change, and how do you lead others, whether that is your team, your family, your business, through a moment of big change. And it's super important and interesting because we live in a world of so much uncertainty where we don't know what's going to happen next year. We don't know if it's going to be a growth year. We don't know if it's going to be a leveled year or if we're just going to lose year. So it's very important to have the skill sets and the mindset in order to not just navigate those moments of transition and uncertainty, but also grow yourself as a person, help others grow, and grow your business in the process. So I love speaking to entrepreneurs, founders, corporate leaders, and people that are really intentional about being empowered in a moment of change and not just floating through it and waiting for life to happen. So those are the audiences I love speaking to. And we've seen amazing results after sharing the insights from The Power of Transitions, which is the interview that we spoke about before.
You said something in there which piqued my curiosity. You talked about change, and then you talked a little bit about navigating other people through change. I think maybe an obstacle that a lot of people face is when they've decided they want to change and they start taking active steps towards trying on a new identity, the rest of the world still thinks of them as this previous identity, whether it's their family or whether it's their colleagues at work or their parents or anybody, their friends. What is your experience, or what has your research taught you about navigating that change where you're changing, but the people around you are still attached to a former version of yourself?
I think first of all, it's important to be aware that even though we're aware and working for that change, not necessarily the other people are going to be aware of that. So first of all, let's tell them, and tell them, I have the intention of transitioning into this, or I'm going through this change in my life, or I've been thinking about this, and sharing that with them. And some people will understand it and they will support it. And some people will really resist it because then that mirrors in them that they are not changing themselves, or that they are stuck themselves, or truth be told, no one really likes change. Like, our brain is not programmed for change. Our brain is programmed to keep us safe. And keep us safe does sometimes mean like staying the same, because I know who you are. I know your weaknesses and your strength. And if you change, that means a threat to me in a way. So give them the kindness and the openness to, share that journey with them. Probably they will support you. Probably, they'll be there for you. And if they are not, that will probably mean that you have to move on. And that doesn't mean stop talking to them, but that does mean that you're going to have to start hanging out with people that are more aligned with this dream and that new identity that you're looking for, so that you can thrive. Because if not, then it becomes like planting a flower in the shade. Like, it doesn't matter how much you water that. If you're constantly going to have these negative comments and these naysayers and these people chipping away at your confidence and your energy, it's going to be very hard to build something. So I would say that first thing is giving them the chance and the opportunity to back you. And you're probably going to inspire them. But if not, then you need to surround yourself with people that will actually challenge you, push you forward, make you want to strive for more, and honor that courage in you.
There's a couple of things I want to dig into there. One is definitely, as you look to change, seeking out people who already have that identity or who are already going through that identity helps, right? It helps to kind of surround yourself with those people and get exposure. What I found too is sometimes in the past, when I was going through a period of change, I would almost expect that those around would change with me. rather than, and so I try to invite them. I try to do it in the nicest way, but really I found the most liberation. I gave the invitation, but I had no expectation that they would go on this journey with me. And I still honored exactly who they were, the way they were, and I still loved that person. And you know what I mean? And so, and that kind of took away any resentment, right? Because sometimes people are like, oh, you're changing, but like I'm feeling left behind. But those are their own emotions. Those aren't, they're not about you. They're about whatever they're going through. So simply just honoring that and being like, okay, I can understand how what I'm doing is making you feel uncomfortable, but I'm not doing it to hurt you. I'm doing it to kind of find myself. And if you do have a good relationship to begin on, I've never found that I've had to leave a relationship, right? There are people who are nitpicky and kind of critical and all that stuff, but those people have usually found their way out of my life anyway. You know what I mean? Like, there's no point in surrounding yourself with vampires of your energy, right?
Absolutely. I always say, like, I take advice from, three people. One is the person that is ahead of me in what I'm trying to build, right? Because everybody gets very creative. Like, okay, so I'm going to write a book. Oh, let me tell you, make sure you don't do this. Make sure you don't do that. How many books have you reading? None. If you're reading at least one book, yeah, I'm all open for advice, right? Advice away. But it's also the person that loses or gains nothing from that change of yours. So you're always going to be able to find a teacher, a colleague, a fellow entrepreneur that is not personally affected whether you win or lose, and they will really give you objective feedback. So, okay, go and test that out. But be very careful, like I said before, and who you share that new vision and new dream with, so that they don't chip away at your energy and your confidence. And then especially women, like, in a way, I found that we really like to validate and over validate things. And I always say, like, men are so, like, they just jump, they go, and then they're unapologetic about what they want. And we are trying to constantly, like, test drive and see and do this and do that. So I think we need to be very careful and honor our courage and our decision to move on, to evolve, by sharing it with people that will guard it, but also only taking advice and feedback from either people that are ahead of us in that new thing, which, yes, give us feedback, or people that have nothing to gain or lose from whether you succeed or fail.
I wonder about the female journey of entrepreneurial freedom. Obviously, I haven't lived it, right? So it's hard for me to even notice sometimes what the difference is between the more male journey to entrepreneurial freedom and the female one. And I wonder, it probably is. Is it easier from your perspective, is it easier for a woman to have an understanding of what the male journey is and what the female journey is and what the difference is? Or is it easier for a man to see both journeys and be able to see what the difference is?
I think none of us can see both journeys. I think we can see it. But obviously empathy helps. Like, putting yourself in the other person's shoes definitely will help, but we will never really know, because in a way society has put a burden on both male and female, right? We discuss a lot about how female have the burden of being the wife, being the mom, and taking care of the house. And at the same time, we need to be successful and conquer the world. But men also have a lot to carry with, which is being the provider, being the moneymaker, being masculine, having that strong energy. And now we're also asking them to be vulnerable and to open up and to share, So I think we're both carrying our burdens. I think if we go back to being open and empathetic with the person, we're going to see that at the end of the end, we're all looking to be happy and to help our loved ones be happy as well, whether that is our friends, our kids, our parents, our spouses.
And the mind shift too, from making those things burdens to making those things blessings, right? Like, I could say, yeah, I have the burden of the pressure of ultimately making sure the bills get paid and that we have enough retirement money and that we have, or I could say, I have the privilege for these people who I love to have the opportunity to take care of them. So I think at some point it's just perspective, because life is hard. Like, life is hard. And you could go around going, this is a burden, or you could go around saying this is a privilege, and it doesn't matter. Maybe they're both true. Maybe they're both lies. I don't know. But putting my energy on the privilege makes it a lot better. You know what I mean? Than putting my energy on looking at it as a burden. So
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, like you say, perspective means the difference. It can be the difference between seeing exactly the same day and feeling like, oh my God, I cannot believe I have to do, several trips to school to pick up my kids and bring them back and make dinner and then also build a business and then also be the greatest wife. Or I can go like, wow, what an honor. I get to spend time with my kids on that car journey and talk to them and see if they're feeling good about school or not, and if they're having issues with their friends or not. And I get to go home and, I have a husband that loves me and, we're building something together. Like that is definitely a big shifter in order for you to feel fulfilled and happy, right? Because there's no one in the world you're going to ask and they're going to say like, no, I have zero problems. You need to be glad to have zero problems. So if you have the richest man on the world, if they have issues or not, they will say yes. So just make sure that you enjoy the journey of building what you're building, and then you're present and there for the moments that matter for you, whatever that is, right?
I think it's so much easier to take your own privileges for granted and to observe privileges in other people and then overvalue the burdens you perceive yourself having and undervalue the burdens that other. And that's really just a matter of perspective, because you're saying, we're all struggling. We all have, look, some people have problems. There's poverty in the world. There's real problems where people don't have enough to eat or have to see their children not have enough to eat. And I don't mean to diminish those in any way, but from an experience perspective, somebody who has less serious problems could still perceive their problems as just as big. That experience of having a significant problem and need is universal. We all have it. That's how we grow. That's what we deal with. So just to bring us back full circle, the lie is you are who you are and you cannot change. And the truth is, it's healthy and necessary to continuously test new versions of yourself, to allow yourself the time and space to grow.
Absolutely. The first step to reaching your full potential is to expand and to test the boundaries of what your current situation, your identity is today.
I'm wondering, since you live in such a beautiful location, I'm wondering if you would be open to us setting up like a 1 day and maybe seeing if we have a dozen listeners out there who want to join us and come down and you do a 1 day training for us on being a clown.
Absolutely. Yes, that is a promise to be quite an experience. We have all beautiful locations here and amazing people. So yes. We can teach you how to put on the red nose and fool around, play around, but also to connect and to be more playful about your life.
I love it. We'll put that together and we'll put it on the show notes or it can be found on routinerebel.com. Estefany, do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website, which is my name. It's estefanymarte.com. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn. I post daily about strategy, but strategy not at the purpose of growing for growing. It's strategy so that you can grow to have a better life yourself. So building a better life for yourself.
Well, it's been awesome getting to know you. It's been phenomenal having you on the show. I'm looking forward to clowning around with you. We'll figure out how to make that happen. And I just want to thank you for being on the show. Thank you very much, Estefany.
Thank you, Stavros, and hope everybody is having a wonderful time.
Much appreciated. Thank you for listening to Wednesdays Off. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you're interested in building a life and business with more freedom, intention, and community, visit routinerebel.com to learn more. Until next time, keep challenging the status quo and keep building your version of Wednesdays Off.